Hello. Hello everybody. Hello. We're going to start. It may look like a small gathering of us, but we are being recorded. A lot of people are going to be watching from home. So we are being videoed. You have your backs to the camera actually, but the speakers will be this way. So welcome to our event, At Resources event, Your Job, Your Way. And we're going to have a lot of experienced and talented speakers who will be covering all aspects of flexible working. And the aim is to help you achieve the flexibility that you need, that you want in your jobs. So we're going to be covering flexible working and finding the right balance, writing the very best CV, nailing your job interview with confidence and ability, and the all-important networking, and negotiating flexible working and how and when to do this. So if you do have specific questions, there will be plenty of opportunity to ask your questions towards the end of the morning. And there will be a short break in the middle of the morning, and then we'll carry on. So just for those of you who don't know about Resource, I'm just going to give you a very brief overview. So Resource is a not-for-profit organisation and has been helping people with their job search for over 30 years. We help people write CVs, their covering letters, their application forms, we prepare for interviews and much more. All of our services are free. And our contact details, you should have a pack in front of you. Our contact details are in your pack. My name is Kate Fulton, should have said that earlier, and I'm a trustee, a proud trustee for Resource. So, I'm going to now be introducing our guest speaker, Katie Friedman. Katie is the founder of the very popular group called Flexible Working People. She has almost 45,000 members. Her mission is to help people navigate the world of flexible working whilst providing a space to connect and network and to find and share flexible jobs. The group has become a powerful platform for people to share their working journeys, their stories, and to get support from others, as well as a place where flexible roles are posted every day. And the group is very helpful, inspiring, and changing people's lives. Katie, thank you.
And people in the community. And it's this incredible engaged network of people from all walks of life, from people who want to work from home one day a week and do some customer service to CFOs. It's an incredible network. And actually there are some real incredible people in the network that sort of spring out every so often. So, people who follow, I was talking to the CEO of M&C Saatchi the other week who said, I've been following you for years and actually it'd be really great to do something with you. We're really trying to change our working policies at M&C Saatchi. Can we have a conversation? And we did some work together. And then there's just so many interesting, exciting leaders in the community who come in and actually offer their advice and support. So it then started to evolve, and it evolved into a jobs board and a place where people could get advice and support, and people who were telling their stories and saying, actually, this is what I'm looking for. And people getting jobs by osmosis or by networking through the community. So just by opening up and telling people, this is what I do, this is what I'd like to do. People in the community, there's recruiters and there's hiring managers, and they were being snapped up out of the group. And I was getting all these messages from people saying, thank you so much. Through this community, I found, a great, incredible, flexible job. So it gave me the momentum to keep going. And since then, Flexible Working People has become a hybrid. So I've still got the community, but I've also got a jobs board and a recruitment business now. So we help people and we work with lots of companies to help people get back to work in flexible roles. And I spend a lot of time talking to companies every day about what their flexible working policies look like and what types of jobs they have available. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a flavour, just to show you the types of comments and the community and the advice that goes on. So you can see on the left-hand side, I'm nervous to post this because it is nerve-wracking to put yourself out there. But if you don't put yourself out there and you just sit sort of scouring jobs boards every day, it's really draining and it's really hard and it won't necessarily get you to the place that you want to be. So nervous to post, but after months of job hunting, I haven't found what I'm looking for. And this particular person is looking for a role between 5 and 10 hours a week. And on the other side, I'm really disheartened with job hunting. And you can just see the reach there, 17,066 comments. So people are really engaging and helping and supporting. Also jobs. So every day we're posting lots of opportunities and jobs in the Facebook group and on our jobs board. And you can see here 3 jobs. And it's not just us that's posting. There's lots of flexible recruiters and social media sites, and there's so many places now that are available for you to look for jobs. I'm going to uncover some of the social media side here, but I'm very happy to, at the end, sort of give you some more signposts for places to go. And I just also wanted to share this story from a lady called Leanne Baker, who is an HR manager, available immediately. I do have childcare commitments. I'm available 4 days a week and need something a bit flexible that makes me work harder. Don't overlook my application just because I'm a mum, give a girl a chance. So she put that out and it went viral. She was turned down for flexible working, and then she put that out there, and after weeks of frustration, she had 500,000 people saw her post. It was liked by nearly 2,000. She was flooded with job offers. And so I think the point I'm trying to make here is that if you are brave and if you talk to people and put yourself out there when you're looking for a job, and I know it can feel quite daunting, there is help out there. So I just wanted to talk about what flexible working is, because I think there's a misconception. And I think that a lot of people, when you say flexible working, just initially go straight to it's part-time. And it's really not just part-time. And you'll see from my next slide all the myriad of different types of flexible working. So when you're having conversations or thinking about your career and what flexible working looks like to you, these are all the different types. So working from home is obviously one, working part-time is another. There's something called compressed hours. You can freelance a contract. There are jobs that are term time only. Hybrid, job share, flexi time, remote. So there's a myriad of different ways that you can work flexibly. And it's just really useful for you to have that in your back pocket when you're talking to people about a job and to think, what is it? What work pattern would work for me? What could work? What are the types of conversations that we could be having when we're looking for jobs? I just thought it would be interesting to talk about the macro piece around flexible working, because the landscape's changed so much. So when I started talking about flexible working, as I said, I think it was a little bit part-time mainly for women who needed to work part-time. And people were quite afraid, I think, of having those conversations with potential employers. So it'd be, oh, when should I bring it up? How should I bring it up? What shall I say? Should I bring it up? Should I bring it up at first interview or second interview? And there was a lot of stress around even bringing it up. But the landscape's changed incredibly, and you'll know that, when the pandemic hit, overnight everyone was forced to go back home and work from home. And that's completely changed the whole dynamic of flexible working and the workplace. And it's a bit of a pendulum. It's been a really odd few years. So initially, everyone got sent home to work, and productivity, you can see Mark Zuckerberg, not that he's one to talk right now with all his redundancies, but he was saying people are more productive working at home than people would have expected. Some people thought that everything was just going to fall apart, and it hasn't. And I think that was a bit of a surprise. I think that actually it didn't fall apart. The world kept turning, the workplace, people were being more productive, and people were realising that work-life balance was, important. Dads were starting to take their kids to school. People were going for a run in the morning and then doing their work, or a run at lunchtime, or, just having more of a life. And so things had really evolved. And so we were all fascinated to see how things would, land post-pandemic. And we're kind of coming out now the other end. I mean, there still is COVID, but we are coming out the other side. And it's really been doing this. So I talked to Amazon just yesterday about flexible working. I was on the phone to their head of talent. They're still hiring. There's definitely, been a bit of a downturn. Obviously, the economy is suddenly imploding, and a lot of the tech firms are making lots of redundancies. You'll be reading the news. But I think the thing is that there are still lots of companies who are still open to flexible working. There are plenty of companies who are open to it. So as we've gone through, you can see there the Great Resignation, during the pandemic and just after the pandemic, people were like, I don't want to go back to work in the office 5 days a week. And so people were resigning and saying, actually, they were talking with their feet. They were saying, I don't want to go back to the office full time. And so they were leaving their jobs in droves which was really an interesting time. Now, things are changing a little bit. There's lots of firms who are saying, and I was just speaking to Jennifer about somebody she knows who, they've gone from everybody working remotely to hybrid working to now everyone back in the office. So there's a real mix. There are firms who are now fully remote because they've decided that they don't want to spend money on office space. There are firms who are offering hybrid. There are firms who are saying bums back on seats, everyone back in the office. But I think the thing is that now we shouldn't be afraid to be having these conversations. We used to say that, don't open the floodgates, don't ask for flexible working because everybody will want it. Well, the fact is most people do want it. The floodgates are well and truly open. So I think that fear factor has now gone of actually bringing up that conversation. There's not a company that you would talk to who hasn't had a conversation about what their flexible working policy looks like. So you don't need to be worried anymore about having these conversations. Now it's more about understanding what it is that you want to do, what works for you, and what works for the person that you're going to work with, etc. So I think that's a really great step change, actually, because we've gone from being afraid to talk about it to it being one of the most highly talked about topics in the workplace. What does flexible working look like? And I think the main place that we've landed is sort of this hybrid working, which is the new workplace work pattern, the new culture, where hybrid has emerged as the working policy of choice. I'd say it's a little bit of a lazy option because flexible working is not just about where we work, it's about how we work, where we work, the time that we put in, but it's about not being present. It's about all the different aspects that make up your work. And actually hybrid is only about where you work. It's like you're in the office or you're not in the office. And actually it's more about full-time with a couple of days at home, but it's still full-time. So it's a little bit of a lazy option. But companies are quite afraid of remote working. And I think one of the main reasons is they're afraid about culture, collaboration. They're the two main reasons why companies get nervous. They feel like if you're not in the office and you can't be seen, it's difficult to build the culture of the company if everybody's remote. And also there's those water cooler moments and the collaboration that goes on, face to face that you can't not have. And so actually there is a place for the office. Absolutely, there is a place for the office. It's just a question of getting, a good balance that works for you, but also works for the company that you're working for. So let's just talk a little bit about asking for flexible working arrangements, because I think a lot of people struggle with this. So I was asked to cover this today. And my thing's not working. I really love this because I speak to people every day, and this is kind of, as long as everything is exactly the way I want, I'm totally flexible. And I do laugh because I do talk to people and I say, what are you looking for? And the first thing they say is, well, I can only work 10 till 2, Monday, Thursday and Friday, and I've got to be here on this day, and I can only do 2 hours here, and I can't get there. It's just all the reasons why and how they want to work. It's like, don't lead with that. Be flexible about your flexibility. It's really important. And I think that not enough people take that on board. They sort of kick off with, well, the most important thing for me is flexibility, and that's what I'm going to lead on. But no company wants to hear that. Companies want to hear what value you're going to bring to them. Why should I employ you? And then we can talk about flex. So how to get the flex you want? I think the first thing is, what's your vision? What do you want? You do need to sort of ask yourself these questions. Before you start negotiating any flexible working request, start to think about what it is, what would work for you best, and understanding the difference between what you want and what you need. And this is the critical piece. So I put here, identify your red lines to survive. Red lines, what are red lines? They're your non-negotiables. So I cannot and will not take a job if I can't have this. They are your non-negotiables. And they might be for you that I can only work 10 till 2. Or actually, you might think, no, probably I could get my mum to look after the kids, or I could work a bit longer, or I'd like that, but I could be more flexible. So it might be international travel. I'm absolutely not traveling anywhere. So they are red lines. Absolutely, I will not take the job if I have to do that. And then you've got your golden lines, and they're the ones that you can be a bit more flexible about. So golden lines are what you'd ideally like, but it might be that you can be a bit more flexible. So how many days? What is your ideal work pattern? Would you consider what types of different work patterns would you like? Are you happy with informal flexibility? Do you need it to be in your contract? Are there any particular days, etc.? So I thought what would be quite nice, just to break up the room a little, have a little chat, is for you to identify now. Have you all got pens and paper in front of you? Mm-hmm. Take a little break and maybe just have a think. You can talk to the people on your table if you want about what red and golden lines might be. So take 5 minutes and have a think about that.
Touching on a lot of good issues here. Huh?
Yeah, good.
Very real. Very real.
Everyone ready to come back into the room? Yeah? So I'm just going to, let's just be a little bit informal here, because I'm just interested in how you felt about that task. Was it hard? Was it harder than you thought? Were you, discussing what your red lines, and were people questioning whether they actually were red or could they be golden? Does anyone want to give some feedback? It's all right? Shall I just pick on someone? Anyone? Yes. Yeah, do you want to share some of that discussion? It'd be good for us to...
Like I said at my table, I've got an unusual situation in that I've got a home in various family reasons. I've got a home in Glasgow and a home in Radler, but in both those homes I've got a fully working office with PC and everything, printer and scanner, and so I could work. I would prefer to work at home, but if I was needed to be in, and say the base was in London, I could be, because I could be in my house in Radler.
Yes.
And I was wondering if someone like me could get a job, would a company employ me in that situation?
I think that there are companies that would always employ people in all different situations, and we shouldn't close ourselves off to, because I can do this, I can't therefore get this. So I think never close it off. Yes, absolutely, you could. You just need to find the right company for you that could work. And I don't know your skill set, what you do, but you can tell me that now later.
Yeah, all sorts of things I've done. I've done all sorts of things, from working on customer services desk,
Yes.
reception, secretarial, worked for accountants, I've worked for solicitors.
There's just so many opportunities that I'm hearing right there. And I think what we do really well, all of us, is look at the reasons why not. Why can't I do it? We go straight to, oh, but I haven't worked for years, but I have to do this. It's all the reasons why not. And we have to start shifting our brains into, actually, here's all the great things that I can do. Yes. And what value can I bring? And I think that's a massive shift. And and I know I talk to people every day who are just having a massive confidence crisis. And then when you talk to them and you hear what they can do, you're like, even a lady came in here before saying, oh, I do voluntary and I'm not sure I could do it. You can do it. I think we have to believe that we can do it, because if we don't believe we can do it, then we're not going to go in and convince anyone else that we can do it. So first step, it's hard, but finding the confidence. Did anyone start with a red line that became a golden line through the conversations? Yeah, lots. Okay, well, that's really good. Can you tell me about yours?
Yeah, so I thought that 3 days a week, which is what I want to start with, was a red line, but then realised that actually I could put it as a golden, because it's offering a fixed amount of time, and then within that time I've got flexibility.
Brilliant. Did everyone hear that? So she said that she started thinking that she could only work 3 days a week, but actually through conversations realised that actually it was more about the hours, and that she could spread them and work it in a different pattern. So it's just thinking differently about how you can work. So rather than saying, and that's true, so a lot of people now, instead of saying 3 days a week, they'll say this job is 24 hours a week and you can work them however you want. So it's just sort of flipping it a little bit, because you'll be like, well, I can't do 3 days because I've got to be on the school run, or I've got this to do on a whatever. But actually, if you look at across the week, you can say, well, I have got 24 hours because I could actually do 5 mornings, or I could do, I could make it up one evening. There are just different ways that you can flex, and that's a really good example. Anyone else want to share anything? I hope that made you think, and I will move on now. So how to get the flex. So I think now we've all thought about what we want. I'm going to tell you that it doesn't really matter exactly what you want. You can't just think about what you want, because obviously this has to work. It's a two-way street, and there are going to be companies that you're talking to, and you can go in and go, I've worked out my golden lines and my red lines, and this is what I can do. And they don't really want to hear that. So you have to have those in the back of your mind when you go in to negotiate your flex. And then you need to start unpicking what the job is. So what is the job? What do they need? What does the hiring manager... I mean, some people be in jobs negotiating flex, and some people going into interviews. And if you're going for a job that is already advertised as flexible, you're already 3/4 of the way there, because then it's just a conversation to be had about what that looks like. But, only... I was saying the stat earlier, only, I think, 15% of jobs advertised as flexible. And that's a very small percentage of jobs. And more people are now putting at the bottom of their job descriptions, we are open to flexible working. I mean, sometimes it's a bit of a tick box, but, but it means that you can start having those conversations. But I think the point is that even if it doesn't say open to flexible working, you can still have that conversation, even if it's not advertised as flexible. If you've got the skills and you go in and say, and you sell yourself and, what you can do. And I've talked to plenty of people who have applied for full-time jobs and ended up working on 3.5 days or 4-day weeks because people want to hire them. And right now there's a massive candidate shortage. People are crying out for good people. So you're in a really strong position in the marketplace at the moment. I know there's redundancies, but there's also a candidate shortage. It's a funny old place at the moment. So so does the job say open to flexible working, or are you going for full-time? I think do your research, really important to do your research. So get online, have a look, someone you know who works there, ask the question, try and engage as much as you can before you go into the interview about the type of company and understand what the job is and what they need from you before you start talking about it. And then we get into the interview. And maybe you're not sure, maybe you don't know what their flexible working policy is. So I would say just ask. Maybe not the first question, hello, what's your flexible working policy? Please don't do that. But, and when should you do it? I think, as part of the conversation, have you got any questions? What's your flexible working policy? How did you can talk about the pandemic and just say, have things changed in this organisation post-pandemic? And now how are people working and how does that work? And you start to get a feel for it. And this is all before you start saying, this is what I want. So, ask all the questions and don't lead with yourself. Don't lead with, tell me a bit about yourself. Oh, hi, I'm Katie. I've been working, blah, blah, and I'm looking for 3 days a week, ideally Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. No. Sell yourself, sell all your skills, get them to love you, want to hire you, and then negotiate your flexible working as part of your job. So now they've met you, they think that you're great, and now you say, oh, that's brilliant. You've talked about the fact that you're flexible, and now, can we talk about what that looks like? Because ideally, I'd like to work, blah, blah, blah. How does that work for you? And they might answer you back, and you get into a conversation. And then between you get to a place where you start negotiating your red lines and your golden lines. And you have those conversations. So I think it's really important that you take away today that flexible working is not a right. It has to be right for both you and for the company, and you have to make sure that it's a compromise and that you're not going in. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of companies I've spoken to that were open to flexible working, but by the time that they've had conversations with potential candidates, they literally they're ready to cry and withdraw the offer. Because they're like, I want to give this person a job, but they're so demanding about what they want that it's actually becoming an issue. And I think it's just, you have to balance it. You can't go in with a tick list of everything that you want and not take into account what they need. So timing is key. Don't kick off with flex. Sell yourself in. Understand what the environment is, what the job is, and how you think that you could manage what you do in the time that you have available with the job so it works for both of you. And remember that your final agreement and where you land might not be everything that you want, but it has to be enough of what you want to start the job and enough of what they want that at the end, like any negotiation, that you just both feel happy and comfortable to move forwards.
Can I ask you a very awkward question?
As long as it's really awkward, yeah.
It is. And it relates to what you just said. How do companies... I don't do work. It is alien to me, and I don't even know how it came into being.
You don't do what?
Work.
You don't do work?
Woke. W-O-K-E.
Oh, woke. Yes.
How do companies handle anything that resembles work these days? Is it going out of fashion?
What do you mean by woke? What do you mean by how do they handle woke?
As you described now, you've got to have my latte a certain way in the morning, don't get up before 9 o'clock and things like this. I'm exaggerating a bit, okay. But over-demanding in a way that it just, you've got to do this because this is my life. And
I think that it depends what you're demanding. I think that woke is a big term.
Sure.
And I think the companies are starting to be a lot more inclusive and starting to understand that different people have different needs and not just ways that they work, but things that are important to them. And I think that companies are more and more trying to change the workplace to be more inclusive because lots of people have different requirements and different needs. I don't know if that answers your question,
it does.
but I think that the world has got a little bit crazy, and well, I'm not going to get into what I think about woke, but let's move on. Right, so how to find a job using social media. So I was asked to cover this as well, and I think social media is really important to your job search, more important than you would imagine. So I think if you're looking for a job and you're just scrolling through job ads and going onto job sites and Indeed and Total Jobs, and you're missing a massive trick, because lots of jobs aren't even advertised. Lots of jobs actually get filled by people just putting them out on social media through their network and asking, because people don't really like paying recruiters and they don't really like paying for advertising either. So if you can fill a job through your network, you will. So I often get given jobs and then they say, oh, actually, sorry, we found someone because such and such who works in the office knew somebody and they got in through the back door. Now, that happens all the time, and we know that happens. Therefore, we need to believe that we can find a job doing the same. And then we go, oh, I'm really uncomfortable with networking, and I don't really know anyone, and who would I ask? And it does become really uncomfortable. But I think that social media is a brilliant place to start. And actually, it's changed the entire nature of the way that we find jobs. So from networking to researching and doing all your searches on companies and finding flex jobs that haven't necessarily been advertised, and to your personal brand, which I'll talk about as well. I think that some of these stats are quite interesting. 73% of recruiters use social media to look for candidates. That's a really high number. So we need to be on social media. We need to be active. 93% of recruiters will look at your profile before making a decision. It's the first thing I do when I get a CV. Or if I'm talking to somebody, I go and look at their LinkedIn. I'll go and maybe check out their Facebook if I was hiring them and just see. And we all do a little bit of that, don't we? Social stalking. And so you need to make sure that your online digital presence represents who you want to be represented as. And 56% of employers admit online profiles influence hiring decisions. So there are some really big stats. I'm going to start with LinkedIn, I think, because it's one of the biggest and the most important social media platforms for job search. I've only got 5 minutes. Gosh, okay. I could talk all day here. Okay, I'll speed up. So LinkedIn, if you don't have a profile, get one. Sort one out if you can. I know LinkedIn is quite a scary place, particularly if you've never been on there, because it's a work community. It's not like Facebook where you're chatting to your friends. So it's a much more unfriendly feeling environment. But having a LinkedIn profile up to date is really important. So professional picture, not that mine's that professional actually. Headline, pack a punch, tell people you're looking for a job. There's an opportunity there to put like open to work. I'm going to move on. And then you've got a featured section, recommendations. I just want to leave you with this. Recommendations are so important. In anything, if you want a plumber, you'd ask for a recommendation. If you want to work with somebody, you'd say, do you know anybody? I love these recommendations because when people come to my LinkedIn profile, or when I go to LinkedIn profiles, it's one of the first places I go. Who have they worked with and what are people saying about them? So you've got an immediate bunch of references straight there on your LinkedIn. So use them.
So people believe them to be credible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to go back and when you request it, you have to say, who did you work with Katie before? Are you an employer? Are you a colleague? Who are you? And then you answer. I mean, I don't question them and think that they're misleading or not necessarily true. I think they're really trusted. There's another thing on there, which is like qualifications and endorsements, where people just grade you for all your different skills. I don't rate that at all, because I think anyone can just go on and click, yeah, brilliant at digital marketing, brilliant at this, brilliant at that, and not have a clue. But I think with the recommendations, they're very credible. So I'd absolutely use them. And networking, it used to be that we'd go and stand in a room and feel like we had to go and talk to strangers and we'd feel really uncomfortable. Networking in today's world is about being online. It's not that scary because it actually just means tapping up some of your friends and your contacts and your ex-colleagues and your ex-bosses. And I was talking to someone last week who was looking for a job, and I said, have you told anyone you're looking for a job? Should I have been working for 10 years? And I'm like, well, go and talk to some of the people you used to work with. Invite them for a coffee. Do not say, hi, have you got a job? Because they're going to say, no, I don't really have a job. But if you say, can we go out for coffee and have a chat and pick their brains, and they'll go, oh, now that we're here, actually such and such, and you'll be on their mind, and that's how it works. And then something comes up and they're thinking about you. But if you don't use your network and you don't tell anyone you're looking, no one's going to be forthright in helping you. So 85% of jobs are filled through networking. So there's a huge opportunity there for you to use your network, to tell people that you're looking, however uncomfortable that is. And I talked about this before, but 70% of jobs are never published. They're either posted internally or they're on people's profiles. So Searching for organic jobs on social media is also really important. So you can do things like put hiring hashtag into your LinkedIn. And if you've connected with people, you'll see the jobs that come up. And they won't be necessarily on jobs boards, but they might be coming up on organic searches. So there's lots of different ways that you can use social media. Facebook groups. So I'm Flexible Working People is a Facebook group, but there's lots of other Facebook groups, just like, well, not just like mine, but other Facebook groups. So I've just put a few up here. The Work From Home Hub, I don't know if any of you have heard of that. They've got loads of great flexible work from home opportunities. There's jobs for women over 40. Then there's niche job Facebook groups as well. So the HR Ninjas. So if you're in HR, or maybe you're in engineering or legal, whatever your profession, there are going to be Facebook groups for you. So you need to do some searching and find your people through Facebook groups and leverage those. And, you know, try not to just be a lurker. You can go on and have a look, but try and engage, try and have conversations, try and put yourself forward, have chat. By doing that, people, you know, you can find that you can network and find really good opportunities. And I've talked about building your online brand, your personal brand. That's really important. It's not just about who you are when you're in the room and people see you. It's about your digital presence, who you are online and what do you want to be recognised for. Does your Facebook say what you wanted to say if they search for it? And it's got all sorts of random stuff on there. Would you feel comfortable about a future employer looking at it? So no one's judging, but just have a look at it with fresh eyes and think, would I want an employer to know that about me? Am I presenting myself as I want to be? How are you differentiating yourself from others? How are you unique? Is that coming across in your job search? And then I've just put here, your dream job does not exist, you must create it. I mean, you'll be very lucky if you find a job that ticks all your boxes. That's very rare to find a job and go, oh, that is me. Sometimes it happens and it's great. But if it doesn't and it's not, make it happen for you, So negotiate the flex, talk to people, work your way in. If you're simply scrolling through job ads, you're definitely missing a trick. Try and be clear on what you want. It's really hard to find a job when you don't know what you want. I talk to a million people who say, I just want a job, 10 hours a week, just need to earn some money. I don't really care what I do, I just want a job. I think, again, that's really hard for people. I talk to them, I say, well, what do you do? What are you good at? How can I help you? We can't, hundreds of people say to me, just help me find a job. Doing what? So you need to do some work too and start to identify the things that you're good at, the types of things that you could do. You can retrain, you can upskill, you can set up your own business, you can freelance, use your network, leverage media, have a brilliant CV. There's so many things that you can be doing to be proactive in your job search. So many things. So I think it's about taking control of your job search. And I'm sure we've got lots of other speakers who are going to be talking about that as well, kind of in more detail about CV, and I know there's a talk about the legal aspects of flexible working. So I'm going to leave you now because I've talked for a long time and I'm getting the look, which is your time is up. And I will leave you with be flexible, and that means you be flexible. We've talked about it already. Be flexible about your flexibility, and good luck to everybody. And I will hang around for a little bit, and if you've got any questions, ask.
Thank you so much, Katie. That was absolutely superb. Thank you. Sadly, Katie can't stay too long. I wonder, do you think we should, if anybody has a burning question, could you maybe take it now before we slide on to Eric? Would that be all right? And if it's something you want to ask personally, please feel free to do so at another time. Anything?
So if you want to use my services, or if you can approach Resource to speak to them, or they'll put the presentation up and you can find me. You can find me? Yeah, she'll be sharing the presentation. Otherwise, go onto Facebook and look up Flexible Working People, and you will find me that way, or on the website. And my mobile number's on there, but don't call me. I don't know why it's up. I get the most random amount of phone calls. Don't call me. Okay. I'll stay for a bit.
Sorry, there's one question here. Thank you.
Do you have any courses where you can learn about how to use LinkedIn?
I can answer that for Resource. There are workshops that Resource put on, and you need to just keep in touch with Resource, and we can tell you about those. I don't know if you are. If you've already been in contact with Resource or not, but if not, do give your details contact details to one of us from Resource, to Jessica over there. Thank you very much. Katie, that was absolutely superb. Thank you so much. And as you mentioned in your talk, that CVs are very important, and that's something that we're going to talk about next. We have the wonderful Eric Salomon here, who's one of our Resources advisors. Eric's has had a wonderful career in corporate management, various well-known brands, and he lectures about employability skills at the Northeastern University in London, and he volunteers, and we're very fond of him here at Resource. We are, aren't we? We are. Eric's going to talk to us about CVs and how to make them stand out, and then he's going to talk about networking, which again was something that Katie mentioned and is absolutely crucial in job searches. So we will, Eric, you can take us up to our break. Thank you.
Someone can switch my mic on up there, please. Hello? Am I switched on? Yep, you can hear me, guys. Good. Good morning, everybody. Let's check the technology. Yep. All about CVs. Let me make it absolutely clear from the beginning. The all there refers to the session. All I'm going to talk about in this session is CVs. It does not refer to the fact that you're going to learn all there is to know about CVs. Quite the opposite. All we can hope to do is scratch the surface and give you some pointers of how to kickstart your work on your CV. And indeed, you never finish writing your CV. CV is a live tool. It can literally change day by day, depending on what you've done, what you think, what jobs you want to apply for, what you've achieved the day before, etc. So I say all this is going to do is hopefully help you kickstart. So, someone like to answer that? What's the purpose of a CV? Come on. Every recruitment process, every job search will start with a CV. What is the purpose of that CV? To sell yourself? To market yourself? Yep. All great answers, but wrong. That is why you have a CV. Okay, the problem with the explanation to market yourself is what? To whom?
Something that will attract them to actually want an interview.
Correct. It's all about getting the interview. It's not a piece of literature. You're not trying to get a Pulitzer Prize for the best written CV in the world. You're not attempting to give your entire life story in the course of a CV. What you want to do is get an interview. So, the basics of a CV. Everyone, 2 pages. Fairly typical. All right, there are some industries will say 1, and others, like particularly in academia, they want 21 because they want a list of every paper you've ever published, etc. But basically, in the vast majority of it, we're looking at 2 pages. Easy to read. If I'm sitting there with a pile of CVs on my desk that high, and I just look at it, and I will say, I can't be bothered reading that. I won't use that word, I'll use a different word, but I'll be polite. I can't be bothered. And in the bin it goes, seriously. You know, you've got 200 applications for one job. I'm not going to bother trying to read through something which doesn't look attractive to read. Yes?
Burning question. How many people actually read CVs today versus putting them in a machine and letting the machine?
Okay, I was going to come on to AI, artificial intelligence. It does go on where the first thing or person that will look at your CV is a machine. It tends to happen very much in graduate recruitment, where they get thousands of applicants for thousands of jobs. It usually is when it's the civil service will use it, because again, large-scale application, the NHS. But I'll touch on it a bit more, how to approach an AI-read CV. But the easy to read, and that applies to AI. If the AI doesn't like it, or the program it's been designed to run on doesn't like it, then again, you'll get rejected. So you need to encourage the person to read it. you know, you think because you've sent in a CV, it's guaranteed it's going to be read. Don't believe it. Absolutely not. Font size, I prefer 12. 11 is just about acceptable if you've really got a lot to say. But again, make it really nice for someone to read. Lots of white space. Modern typeface. You know, Times Roman is a little bit past its sell-by date. Calibri to Homer, something that looks more up to date. We don't want Churchillian sentences in a CV, please. Short and punchy, essentially bullet points, really. Because it makes it a lot easier, A, to read, and B, to get your message across. If you're going to say something in 6 lines, which you could say in 6 words, then do so. Now, this seems very weird, because we're all used now to total lack of grammar. You know, we send texts, we do it all, and there's absolutely, and believe it or not, when people read a CV, it can turn them off. And in fact, I know of organizations where they have 3 strikes and you're out. If there is 3 typos or grammatical errors in the CV, automatic rejection. So it might be old-fashioned, but it's just something you should watch out for. And finally, from the technical point of view, always save your CV and send it as a PDF. I'm sure we've all had the experience. We've done something online, we've done it in Word or whatever it is. We printed it out, and the layout bore no resemblance to the layout we thought. Because it will get printed out. Because if you get the interview will probably print it out to have next to them while they're interviewing you. So please do it as a PDF and overcome the technical. So there's some just basics of how to put a CV together. Most importantly, because it's there to get you an interview, your CV needs to be tailored to the job you're applying. Every job you apply for, you will have to redo your CV. You can't just have a generic CV and just press the button every time you want to apply, because you want to get that interview. So therefore, you have to be cognizant of what the interviewer is going to be looking for. And the key to that is the competencies. What does the job description say? What does the person's specification say? You know, what is that organization looking for? If they want someone who can use Excel, make sure they know you can use Excel. If they couldn't care less, don't bother. Don't waste the space telling them about things they don't want. Use those 2 pages to tell them the things they do want to know, which is fundamentally, can you do the job? You know, are you worth bringing in for an interview? Because your CV says, yeah, your experience, your knowledge, your competencies, your skills, pretty much what I want. Get the individual in and see if indeed that is the case. Volunteering, very, very important volunteering. It looks great on the CV. It helps you fill gaps. If you've had, you know, the number of times, in fact, only yesterday I was looking at a CV, a client, and finished it 2012. 10 years. Oh, so you've been sitting on your backside for 10 years? Of course not. She'd done all kinds of things in the 10 years. Oh, yes, I used to organise things for PTA. I used to help out as a teaching assistant. You know, put it on your CV. It is legitimate. You know, it wasn't a job. I didn't get paid for it. Where does it say that a CV is only to cover paid work? I've never, ever seen that written anywhere. A CV is to position your skills, market yourself, and volunteering is a very powerful tool. And in fact, when clients first come to Resource and they are unemployed now to work, one of the first things we'll say is, get yourself some volunteering. It'll help develop your skills, it'll help develop your network, and it'll look impressive on your CV.
Can you also include within that pro bono work?
Absolutely, even, no, great. I mean, because it's not only about skills and competency, it's about you as an individual. You know, the fact you're prepared to do these things says something about you, doesn't it? So no, absolutely. So demonstrate skills and achievement. Don't just say, I sold a lot. You know, I sold 30% over target. Be very specific about your achievements and defining what your skills, the results of your skills, have delivered. And the final point, as we just talked about, AI, artificial intelligence. There is actually a website called VMOC, if you want to go on and have a look at it, which will talk to you. It is an AI, it's a system that's used by a number of companies, and you can even, I think you can even try, there might be a free way of actually putting your CV through VMOC and see if it would get past etc. So just be aware. And the key to AI is keywords. If the job advert is for a financial manager, don't write that actually you're a financial director, because you'll get rejected for being too senior. If it's for an FD, a financial director, and you're a financial manager, it'll reject it because you're too junior. Okay, so if they're recruiting a financial, you're a financial director, whatever the job title is in the ad, in the job description, that's what you are. Use their keywords. Look the words that they're using to describe skills and competencies. So, in terms of the layout, a profile, 4, 5, 6 lines that basically summarizes why they should bother to interview you. It's not a mini life story. It is, I have got the necessary skills, experience, and knowledge that you have told me about in that job description. And make it into a little story, 5 or 6 lines about you. Because when whoever's going to read it does pick up that CV, the first thing they will do is look at the profile. Yeah, this looks like this person could be right. I'll read on. If they don't like the profile, in the bin. So please get the profile right. Then a couple of achievements to really draw me in. If I'm recruiting a sales director and your achievement is, every year for 10 years I've doubled my target achievement, I'll carry on reading it. This guy sounds interesting. As I said, it's not just paid work. Obviously, your education and qualification, and don't go into masses of detail. If you have got a degree, don't bother putting in your GCSEs, totally unnecessary. Tell them about your O-levels. If you did O-levels, like some of us did, call them GCSEs on your CV. It's all the same. It's the same level, so you're not lying. It just helps make it seem more date neutral. There are things which might not be asked for in the job description. That's the classic, languages. The job might not require languages, but it's worth putting on your CV, because if you get 2 candidates at the end of the day, one speaks 5 languages and the other one only speaks English, there's a pretty good chance to say, well, hang on, it's like, we're thinking of developing into France one day, or, we deal with suppliers who don't speak good English. So it's a little bit of icing on the cake that works. Any positions, responsibility, if you've been a school governor, if you've been trustee of a charity, worth putting on your CV. Again, it says something about you and points to your skills. And finally, hobbies and interests. Don't go into boring detail and don't lie. A number of times I've done interviews and on interest, reading. And I'll say, okay, tell me, what are you reading at the moment? Okay, so please don't lie. If you put reading or you put going to the theatre, actually, make sure they're true, or at least get 1 or 2 things under your belt to support it. Okay, very quickly, that's a horrible CV. You can see for all the reasons, the alignment, it's irrelevant information. Won't dwell too long. Let's just look at, there we go. I mean, it's inoffensive. You're going to tell, nothing stands out. Yeah, but I'm happy to read that. Beware the Marmite effect. A number of people who do stupid things to their CVs and say to me, but it'll stand out. Yeah, it'll stand out to put in the bin. Don't turn off 50% of the people who are going to read it. Keep it simple, keep it clear, let it get read, and demonstrate that you've got what it takes for the role. And again, there's all the... Okay, lots of white space, easy to read. Yeah. Now, you'll notice I've headed that chronological CV. Everyone's familiar with the chronological, where you start with your employment in reverse order, starting with the most recent. That is a functional CV, which doesn't actually rely on the roles, which you can see are just summarised. It focuses on experience and skills. And it's a great CV if you have got a 10-year gap, which you want to disguise, because all the interesting information now is on the front page, and the rest of it is very simply on the back page. And 2, it's great if you're looking for a major change in direction for your career. If you've been an accountant all your life, and all of a sudden you want to become a lawyer, there's no point in having a whole list of jobs about being an accountant. What you want is to highlight all the skills and experience you've got, which would make you a good lawyer, etc. So, how we help, and I'm sure Victoria, I presume, will talk a lot more about the various seminars and webinars that we have. but there's lots of things that we do at Resource in order to help you produce a good CV. So as I said, by no means all, hardly anything. Yes?
Will we be getting this? Because there's some excellent stuff that I'd like to refresh.
You'll be receiving that presentations the next couple of days.
Super.
But as I say, this is literally scratching the surface. You know, we do a whole half day just on CVs and all kinds of things. So please bear that in mind. Okay, I'm going to now move on. So you kick-started your recruitment, your job search with your CV, and here's where we absolutely agree, spot on, top of the list for job search, as Katie was pointing out, is networking. So why and how? And again, you know, I like to start off with a question. So who'd like to tell me, what is networking? We've been using the word all morning, and that is the problem. You're all frightened, aren't you? Who likes networking? One. Who doesn't like networking? Who claims they've never networked? So we only have one person. Actually, and why do you like networking? Okay, and when you do networking, what are you actually doing? Fine, but how do you, what's the mechanism that you use? Thank you. And again, Katie used the word so many times. Networking is about having conversations. You don't need to be frightened. Hey, we've all come in here together, we've never met anyone before, and we're all happy to talk to each other, aren't we? That's all networking is, just talking to each other. You don't have to be afraid of it. Yeah?
No, I was saying, if you put it that way, it's easier to click.
So meeting people, which is exactly what you said, sharing information, making introductions, asking for advice. The one thing you don't do is ask for a job. Have you got a job, mate? No. Very easy. That will be 99% of the time, that is the response to, have you got a job? Networking is not about asking for a job. It's about all those things. And the number we agree on? Absolutely. 70% of jobs never ever get into the public domain. They're not in newspapers, they're not on the Indeed website, they're not in agency windows. They are absolutely hidden from view. So therefore, you have to network if you want to get a job these days. Absolutely. I'm not saying you don't use agencies, but networking is, you know, a key element of that whole process. And basically, networking is all about the 3 I's. Information, introduction, introductions and ideas. Information. I've just come to the UK, I've no idea how to get a job. Who do you know who can help me? Oh, go and see Resource, go and see Kate. Okay, you're asking for information. Introductions. I am an accountant, I want to be a lawyer. Who do you know who is a lawyer who could help me? Again, asking for a further introduction, so you develop your network. And then finally, ideas. I haven't a clue what job I want. Who do you know I could have a chat with that could help me, you know, decide what my career path should be? You're not asking for a job. So it's all about the 3 I's. Remember, you are not asking for a job when you network. And that should take the fear out of it. Because I think that's what puts people off. You know, the prospect of having to say, so I'm out of work, you know, have you got a job? This is just conversations to do all these things. Self-explanatory. What stops people networking? Yeah, all right, there's all the excuses we always make. Yeah, oh no, I'm too busy. I've got all these applications to fill in. I've got to research. And again, as Kate said, it's no good just sitting in front of a computer all day researching. That's not going to get you a job. It's what you do with the research that really counts. And then there's the emotional stuff, as I say, fear, because nobody wants, it's almost embarrassing. And again, the fear of rejection, no. When if people keep saying no when you say, have you got a job, or will you give me a job, then obviously that's going to have a big negative impact. That's the other side of the coin. Why are people prepared to network with you? Surprisingly, most people actually are very helpful. They're nice. They want to help you. Some don't, I agree, but 99% of people are very, very nice, very helpful, very concerned. You know, they know you're out of work and they want to help you. Mutual benefit. If any of you come to me and ask me for some help or advice, I'll learn things from you. You know, because you will have worked for organisations I've never heard of. You will have contacts that I've never heard of, but could be valuable to me as well. So it's a two-way street, networking. And just remember that when you are networking. You don't have to be embarrassed, because you're not, because you're not asking for a job, you're not asking for someone other than a bit of their time and knowledge. And people are more than happy to give it. Being selfish, you know, I might one day want to get a new job or to do something or to help other people. And it helps me building my network. One of the biggest reasons, of course, is if I recommend you go and chat to someone, they're doing it for me. You know, they're quite, oh, I don't want to let Eric down. If Eric says you should go and talk to this individual, it's probably worthwhile, I'll do it. So it's very important. And finally, if it's in an environment like this, you know, if I fancy that I actually like you, I'll get on with you, you're far more likely to get something out of me from a networking tool. And it says something about you networking. You know, you're proactive. You're doing something. You're not just sitting on your butt looking at the screen all day trying to find applications. You're demonstrating initiatives. You can demonstrate your communication skills in a networking context. You know? And finally, market yourself. Yeah, you are prepared. Nothing wrong with marketing yourself. I hate the word selling. You know, the concept of someone, I'm selling. You're not selling yourself, because that has all kinds of unfortunate connotations. And most important is it's exaggeration. For some reason, people always see exaggeration in selling. You're not selling yourself. You're telling me how it is. This is me. This is what I can do. This is what I want to do in the future. That is not, you know, in any way exaggerating or laying it on too thick. Just a couple of things to bear in mind. You can't be in interview mode the entire life while you're looking for a job. But at least most of the time, you know you're coming to meet 30, 40 people. This look business-like. You know, look like you're looking for a job. You don't come looking like you're about to go and do the decorating. And no one is, so you know, it's fine. But just remember, if you're in any large group, dress for the occasion. Talk positively. The number of times someone will refer someone to me and say, Eric, will you have a word with this individual? They're interested in marketing. I've done one or two things in marketing in my life. Yeah, of course, no problem. The individual will come and they'll start off giving me I've just been made redundant. Oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm looking for... Yeah, you've got to be positive. You know, no one really wants to help you if you yourself don't give the impression of wanting to help yourself. Obviously, be prepared to have the conversations we've talked about. Please introduce yourself, and you'll think I'm mad. Have a business card. You know, just your name, contact details, and just a line of what you are. If you're an accountant, just say accountant. You know, if you're a financial advisor, so at least. And I saw someone did it to me yesterday. They actually pulled out their phone, QR code. I picked up the QR code. I've got all the individuals' details now. So that's, you know, a modern business card. You don't have to go that far. Old-fashioned ones will do, but the important thing is, remember, you know, I've thrown it in a drawer. probably business cards, but come the day when someone says, Eric, I'm looking for a new financial director, I say, I'm sure I spoke to someone, or I need whatever. Yeah, it's the classic. If you have a decent decorator, plumber, electrician, what's the first thing you do? You'll tell everybody about it. Oh, I have this great electrician, this great plumber. And that's how networking works. So finally, again, just very briefly, and I'll add in on that top lines, because someone did mention LinkedIn, we actually have 3 LinkedIn seminars covering LinkedIn. That's how important LinkedIn is in the recruitment process. So we have 3 different levels, different stages of your LinkedIn development. Was it 93% of people will not be employed without having been reviewed on LinkedIn. So it is absolutely critical, and hopefully I've stuck more or less to time.
That was very enlightening, very helpful indeed. Break, teas and coffees. We're only going to keep it really short. We are slightly running over time. I think the rain sort of delayed everybody a bit this morning. So do help yourself. Are we all okay temperature-wise? I don't know if it's maybe there's just a bit of cold here, but yeah, we're okay? Okay.
We've actually got 5 minutes. Start networking, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you hear me now? There we go. So you might get a chance to have a bit of small talk, so you are relaxed. I think the other bit is when you get a chance to actually say hello to them, shake their hand firmly, look them in the eye, make eye contact. All good things you'd expect to do, but it does make a massive difference on the first impressions. So to help shape some of this, I think we're going to be talking a lot about the preparation as well as the actual going into the interview itself. And I always summarize the preparation you need to do as four or five key things. Know your CV. You're going to be asked about it, and if you're umming and ahhing, how convincing is that you really did those things on your CV? Second thing is, make sure that you know the job description. The job description is the key to what the interviewer is probably looking for. And I think you make sure that you're going to understand what they're looking for, because it will help you in answering their questions. Third thing is know the company. We're going to come into that a bit later on, but you should definitely have a clue about what they are, who they are, and done some research, maybe on the interviewer. That would certainly help. Fourthly, do some mock interviews. Practice does help. And making videos of yourself and watching them back will make a big difference. So there is a lot of preparation to get the right interviews. You're not going to get it right first time, and certainly resources here to help. So I'm going to look, the rest of this little talk is structured around these three key questions. So I'm going to start with the first one. Can you actually do this job? So despite having done all that hard work on your CV, you're getting in the interview, the CV has done its job. Please don't assume that the interviewer has read your CV or even remembers it. You have to go in assuming that you are going to be a blank canvas. And I know when I've been to interviews, when I've been interviewing, sometimes I get a quick chance to ask, to flick through. The first question I always ask is, tell me about yourself. This is a wonderful question. A, you can prepare it, you are the expert, and B, you can present yourself however you wish. So I would take the opportunity to make sure that you could answer that question of who you want to be seen as. So if they do ask you, introduce yourself, resist the temptation of going chronologically. It's a bit dull. And besides which, you don't want to be seen as a graduate where you started or an apprentice. You want to be seen as what you are today and how you want to come across. I think the other thing I always caution is when people talk about themselves is they use the word, and it annoys me, I'm passionate. Or I've got all the right experience and skills. Yeah, I know that might be true, but give me evidence and give me examples to illustrate how you are passionate without using the word, and how you've got the skills without just saying, I've got skills and experience. So when you're going to answer your questions, I'm going to encourage you to think that you're playing word bingo with the interviewer. And they've got a list of things they want to hear from you, which is on the job description, and that's what you've got to make sure you use in your answers, because that will make a big difference. And the other one is when you're giving the answers, you want to give some sort of, you want to make it much more real, and therefore I would really encourage you to give some sort of sense of scale. So if you're working with budgets, tell them what size you went for. If you're working with people, how many people. If you're talking to people, at what audience size, or readership, or budget, or revenue, or costs. Give me some numbers to illustrate some of your answers so they feel more tangible. I managed a P&L is very different if it's 500 quid and if it's 5 million quid. So it's really important you give me a sense of scale when you're answering them in those contexts, because that'll be how you tell them about yourself. I'm just going to jump to this here. I'm not going to go through this slide in much detail, but I do think you should expect a couple of doozy questions. And these are the ones which I think might be useful to practice, to think of how you can answer them positively, and but it depends very much on the nature of the job. Because I think that these can often really put people off their stride, and they shouldn't do if you prepare for them. So I think it depends on the context of the job that you're being asked to do. If I can get this to work. There we go. But do you want the job? So part of, I think, of do you want the job is demonstrating to the interviewer that you've actually made the effort to find out as much as you possibly can. So certainly in researching the company, when I'm doing my mock interviews with people, I want to know that they've actually read the website and that they've retained some information and they've maybe done some thinking about who the people are, and I will take on the personality of the person, or at least the name, and expect them to try and put that across. It can be very dull, however, for the interviewer to hear facts and figures from the interviewee. So to demonstrate you've done the homework, I encourage people to ask a question about the material or to make a comment about the material. So I was reading your website and I found something really interesting. So I know you've done the homework and now you're engaging with it. That's much more meaningful. Or I had something else, or what's the next step, what you're doing on this next project. So finding some way of integrating is more interesting. I think being able to answer why you want to work for us, every company is interested, why me specifically? There are many other companies that do PR, marketing, law, whatever it is, you need to have something which will say what's special about that company and what you noticed. It might be comments that people have got on Glassdoor, that it's a nice place to work. It might be something they've done in the news and the press, so you can show that you've done some homework about this company, you've done some research. And I think the last bit is actually something I work very hard with my mock interviewees, is having a story of why you're on the job market. I'm looking around the room, I don't see many people who might be of graduate age, but I mean, it's a different story if you're a graduate if you're going into employment from another career. Whatever your story is, it's got to be presented in a convincing manner. If it's got vagueness in it, my impression is that an interviewer will make up in their own mind with their own biases and fill in a story accordingly, and you don't want that. You want to put a story across that works, that puts you in a good light, and is convincing. So that might be something we need to practice and make sure you're comfortable in saying in a way that won't let the interviewer's mind wander. I have often felt that unsaid things are very dangerous, and I can put my own interpretation on it, and it may not be to the client's, to the interviewee's advantage. So definitely, you want to make sure you've got a clear story for that. Okay. Will you fit in? So I'm trying to build a team, and I want people who will fit in with my team. So I want to find out what you're like. And these three questions illustrate three different styles of questions you might get. The first one's a competency question. I've got a list of things I want to look for, and I'm going to ask you to tell me a time when you've done something which is of that competency. And I will want you to answer it in a way that convinces me that I think you can do that role. The second question is much more about a situational, how do you do things, and how will you deal with it? And the third one is a strength-based question. And the strength-based question doesn't ask for anything specific. It's quite interesting to see how you will respond to it. So what do you volunteer? So it's three different styles. I often find that the first one, the competency, is what we'll find with people who have got a track record and a working career. And you might find more strength-based questions when you're dealing with people who are going into the workplace for the first time, because they won't necessarily have that career to build on. Now, so I'm going to spend a second or two, if I can. There we go. The star-based questions. So I'm going to focus on the competency questions. There is a technique which I like to see, and we advocate strongly in Resource, how to answer a competency question. Has anyone seen this star before? Yeah. It's not invented by Resource. It was invented in the 60s by a chap called J. Galbraith. And it is used and advocated everywhere. I often see job descriptions which talk about the interview process. They say to their candidates, we will expect you to use the STAR technique in answering questions. I saw that on a Deloitte one recently. So it is industry standard, well regarded, and is very helpful. I'm not going to go through too much detail, but let me just give you a couple of points on this. When you're giving an example, you need to take the interviewer with you. And that's why it is very important, I tell people, to not skimp on the situation. If you start telling me a story about when you worked somewhere and I don't understand where you are, how many people you are, what it feels like to be there, I'm playing catch-up all the time trying to listen to your story and I don't understand it. You must take the second or two to tell me about the situation. The next thing I normally advise people is, you're going to tell me about a task you had to achieve. If you make it sound easy, then when you tell me what you actually achieved, I'm not going to be that impressed. So big up your task. Make it sound difficult. Tell me about the obstacles. Tell me about the people issues. Tell me how it's hard to achieve. And then when you tell me how you've done it, I'm going to be super impressed. So big up the T is really important. And then to illustrate the result, I need those facts and those figures again to give me a sense of scale, because that will bring it alive and I'll understand what you've done. So if you improve readership and you're writing stuff, what did the audience go from? What did the hits go from? I need some numbers. It really does help to illustrate what you've done. So I often suggest to people, go to the job description, pick on some of those competencies they're looking for, and come up on your own with 5-star stories. And that should be enough ammunition for you to twist it round when you get into the interview, because the interviewer might pick something you've not asked, but you can twist one of your stories already. Or they might ask something, 2 questions, and you need another example, so you have some ammunition to work with. I don't like that slide. Sorry. And then on this final slide that I want to is just on the questions. There is an opportunity always in an interview to ask questions. And I have seen people try to challenge the interviewer and show how clever they are. May I recommend you don't try this? This is really an opportunity for you to actually do as it says, ask questions. Do I really want to work here? Is this a place I think I could fit in? So the things you want to try and avoid is being too clever, asking questions the interviewer can't answer and won't answer, like being, what's your growth plans and what's your strategy going to be in the next 3 years? Or asking questions you already know the answer to. But what you can ask is, what's it like to work here from a cultural point of view? Do you socialise together? Is there a pressure to support each other? What does good look like? What will I expect to achieve in 3 months? What are other challenges for people in this role felt in the first 6 months to get used to it? Things which will make a difference to you. Okay, and that's my final bit here. But what I would say finally is, you've got into the interview. The interviewer really wants to make sure they can offer you the job, because you've done the hard work by finally getting this far. I would definitely think that you're halfway there, and the interview it should be seen as the final hurdle to be able to get that job. And I wish you the best of luck for it.
There you go. Oh, you want probably that.
Why not? Thank you. That was absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much. And we will be hopefully reverting to you to ask some questions. But not before we have heard Jonathan speak. Jonathan Newman, thank you for coming. Jonathan is an employment barrister. He has extensive experience of High Court litigation, High Court employment appeals litigation, and the Employment Tribunal, which we hope that you'll never have to appear in, but we're going to hear a bit about it anyway. We're really grateful. Thank you for coming to speak to us today. Look, you've even got a tune in the background. That's nice. And you're going to help clarify some of the legal aspects of working. So if we can welcome Jonathan and questions after. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. So firstly, thank you for the invite today. I've been asked to come and speak about the legal aspects of flexible working, which I understand you heard about this morning. But firstly, by way of introduction, I am a barrister, specialising in employment law, and I've done so for about 12 years. Now, they say COVID accelerates trends. Flexible working is something which is being talked about so much now as compared to 3 or 4 years ago. And that's essentially because people have worked from home, they've had flexible working environments, and now that they're going back into the workplace, expectations have changed. They don't necessarily want to go back to the office 5 days a week for normal working hours. And I can speak about that from personal experience, because I worked from home for about 2 years during the pandemic. And at the end of it, I said to my wife, I said, Jasmine, all this talk about flexible working, it's a real opportunity. I might be in the house, out the house. And she looked at me and said, Jonathan, after 2 years of working from home every day, I want you to go back to the office 6 days a week. So I think, careful what you wish for. But let's start talking about flexible working, and specifically over the course of the next 10 minutes, I want to jog through the legal position, so what are your rights, and also talk a little bit about the remedies, so to the extent it is refused. So I'll start by saying, who can apply for flexible working? I'll put that out to the audience. Are there any restrictions? Do you need kids? Do you need to be a certain age? Who can apply? Everybody. Yeah, spot on. I mean, it's been since 2014, it's a statutory right that any employee can apply for flexible working so long as you've worked for a period of 6 continuous months. Now, just to be clear, it's a right to request flexible working. It's not a right to work flexibly, and there's a difference there. It's only a right to request. Now, when I say flexible working, what I mean is essentially working flexibly in one of 3 areas, typically. It's either flexible hours, so maybe starting late, finishing early, working reduced hours. It can be flexibility in terms of the days you work, so it may not be a full working week, or it may be flexibility about the location you work, so at the office, at home. Go on. Yeah, absolutely. So the regime, the flexible working regime, is a system of rules to govern how those requests should be made. And so it's to make it clear for both the employee and the employer the way to go about it. Now, I'll talk about those rules in a minute, but quite frankly, whatever those rules are, you're right. Any employee, regardless whether they've been employed 6 months or not, could make that request. And in reality, the best employers are the ones who are quite compassionate and think about what employees want. And the best employees also think about what an employer and the business needs. So the best thing really would be to ignore everything I'm about to say for the next 10 minutes and just have a sensible grown-up conversation. However, not everybody's a grown-up, and that's why these rules are in place. Does that make sense? So when I talk about flexible working, generally we talk about hours, days, or location. Now, I'll start by talking about the flexible working regime specifically, and then I'll talk about some other regimes which overlay and overlap with it. So starting with the flexible working regime, again, a question for the audience. Do you need a specific reason to apply for flexible working? And do you have to give that reason, do you think? I've got a few nods, a few shakes. So the answer is you don't even need to say what your reason is, purely from a flexible working perspective. I mean, typical ones are increased burden of childcare, or it may be a case of an individual has some type of disability. But you could just like train spotting. You want to see the trains at 5 o'clock, or you might already choir practice. I mean, you don't actually need any reason whatsoever. Now, with that background, let's talk about the procedure. So firstly, you need to make the request in writing. You need to spell out exactly what you would like and what impact you think it would have on the business. At that point, the employer has 3 months to consider your request and to make a decision. And at the end of those 3 months, they can do one of 3 things. They can either accept it, or if they're not sure about the sustainability of what they asked, they can suggest a trial period, and that can be up to 3 months, or by agreement between the employer and the employee, they may agree to extend it beyond 3 months, or they can reject it, as you say. And if they're going to reject it, they can only do so for one of 8 specific reasons. And I'll come on to those specific reasons in a minute, but essentially the way to think about them is they are genuine business reasons. They can't just say, I'm not going to allow you to work flexibly because that's the way it's always been in this company. They can't just say, I'm not going to let you work flexibly because you millennials, you think you own the place. They can't do that. There's got to be one of 8 specific reasons, and the employer needs to act reasonably when they're considering it. So let's talk about what those 8 reasons are. Firstly, one reason to turn down a flexible working request is the burden of additional costs to the employer. So let's just think of an example. Say a GP who works in a GP practice. They may want to go from working 5 days a week to 4 days a week. That means the GP practice, they've still got the same number of patients, they need to find cover on that 5th day. Typically, they'd get a locum or a temporary GP to cover. Their rates tend to be higher. So it's the question, can the practice afford those additional costs? And that may be a good or a bad reason to turn down flexible working. The second reason is a detrimental effect on the ability to meet the customer demand. So again, it's fairly obvious stuff, but I'll give you an example. Imagine a nightclub owner. He needs bouncers on a Friday and Saturday night, the busiest night of the week. If somebody says, I don't want to work Friday nights, then it makes it difficult for that nightclub owner to have a bouncer on a Friday night. It's just not going to happen. It's fair enough. Other reasons, inability to rearrange the existing work between the rest of the staff. If you don't have staff to cover the flexibility, that's a reason. Similarly, an inability to recruit additional staff to cover the flexibility. That's also a good business reason to turn it down. And if you just jog through the rest, another reason is a detrimental impact on quality, a detrimental impact on performance, and finally, it's just an insufficiency of work at the times you say you're willing to work. Say you say I want to work at weekends rather than during the week, but there's just no clients there at the weekends. So I don't want to dwell on those reasons particularly long, but I think they could just be categorized as genuine business needs. That's the point. And an employer can say no. So going back to what I said at the beginning, everybody has a right from 6 months on to request flexible working, but they don't actually have a right to work flexibly. That is a conversation with the employer. See a hand up. They absolutely do, yes. Yeah, so they need to say their reason. It needs to be one of those specific 8. And also, an employee should have a right to an appeal. So again, theoretically, you can talk about it. So that's just jogging through the legal aspects of flexible working. Now, if an employer says no, and they say no for a reason that's not one of those specific 8, or if they don't come back to you within the time limit of 3 months, or they just generally don't act reasonably, so they take irrelevant factors into account, then you have a right to go to the tribunal and bring a claim. Now, that claim's not worth very much. It's worth up to 8 weeks of salary, and for various kind of random reasons, a week's salary is capped at about £500. So essentially, the claim is 8 weeks of £500, about a £4,000 claim, and that's a compensatory claim. Now that may be better to have in your pocket than somebody else's pocket, but it doesn't really help you with the flexible working request. So I mentioned earlier that there are other statutory protections, and where we tend to see other statutory provisions come in is in relation to discrimination. Because a lot of the very common flexible working requests tend to be about mothers wanting time for childcare, or individuals returning from maternity leave and having this new burden of childcare responsibilities. It can be religious requirements, for example, wanting to finish early on a Friday, and often we see requests about disability as well. So individuals, for example, who, for mental health reasons, can't be in confined spaces, they want to go into the office later in the day. Now, those typical requests, what they all have in common is they all relate to somebody's what we call protected characteristic. So in those examples, we're talking about gender, we're talking about religion, and we're talking about disability. And whenever an individual has a protected characteristic, they're protected by the discrimination laws in the UK. And what we see very often in the world of flexible working are indirect discrimination claims. So indirect discrimination is when an employer applies a rule to everybody, so they don't discriminate you in particular, it applies to everybody, but it indirectly affects you and puts you at a substantial disadvantage. So for example, imagine there is a bank and they have traders and they spend a lot of the time trading with Asian offices, so Hong Kong, Singapore. So they have to have their traders on the trading floor at 6 a.m. Of course, they need to be on the trading floor while the Asian markets are still open. That is a necessary part of that job. So that's a necessary part of that job. However, the individual who wants to do the school run in the morning can't do that. Now, if they request to come in later, you've got this clash between, on the one hand, a necessary part of the job, an early morning trader, and on the other hand, an individual who wants to do the school run and is indirectly discriminated against on the basis of, in that case, increased childcare. So at that point, what the law does is it goes back and it looks at what is the reason why somebody's making the request. Unlike the flexible working regime where the reason doesn't matter, you look at the reason and you weigh the reason against the discriminatory impact it's going to have, and you make a decision. So let me give you an example. There was a very well-reported case a couple of years ago. It was Mrs. Thompson was an estate agent, and she worked 5 days a week, 9 till 6 in the estate agency. And she put in a flexible working request to work 4 days a week instead of 5, and she also wanted to finish an hour early every day. And the reason for that is because she wanted to pick up her kids from nursery. So she put in her flexible working request, and the estate agency said no. They said that we need you for that extra hour at the end of the day. And they gave various reasons, but not least, they said that they want continuity of agents. So when sellers are in touch with the agent, that they always speak to the same agent. And on that basis, they said no, there's a detrimental impact to the quality they're providing. So Mrs. Thompson resigned, and she brought a claim for indirect discrimination. So her claim was that they have this rule that everybody has to work from 9 till 6, Monday to Friday, but it indirectly affects women, she said, because women, in general, hold the majority burden for childcare, and she's a woman, so the fact that you have to do these longer hours impacts on women, so it's indirectly discriminatory. Now I'll tell you, that went to the Employment Tribunal. Does anybody have any inkling about who won? You think she won? Anybody else? No? Shakes? So she did win. And she won about £185,000. So at the tribunal, because we're in the arena of indirect discrimination, they look at the business reasons for saying no, and they weigh it up against the discriminatory impact of this indirect discrimination. And what the business said was, we've heard these reasons about continuity of an agent, but when you actually dug down into it, those reasons weren't so coherent. Not least, there were 3 other agents in the office until 6 o'clock. They also found that the agents tended to share clients, so the client, it wouldn't be unfamiliar to speak to somebody else. And if nothing else, it's not particularly an industry where things are time sensitive. Things often, something that is a query at 5:30 on a Thursday can probably wait till 9 a.m. the following morning. So that's the kind of reality of the business. And on the other hand, you've got an individual who can't pick up their kids because of childcare. The tribunal accepted that women tend to have the majority of childcare obligations, and on that basis, they weighed those up, and they found that this was indirectly discriminatory and couldn't be justified. Is that a question? No? No? Okay. Yeah, don't forget it. I've been told 1 more minute. To be honest, I've got plenty more cases up my sleeve, but that's a pretty good indication of where discrimination and flexible working meet each other. Now, if I could conclude for the last minute then, I think flexible working is really, it's a balancing act between what the employer's genuine business needs are and what an employee's request is. And it tends to be the case that employers that are accommodating for employees will have a happier workforce and will have better retention in terms of their talent. But similarly, employees who understand the business and they're flexible to what the business want are more likely to succeed in getting their flexible working request. So any takeaway I'd say is you don't want to end up in tribunal, or you really don't want to end up having these types of disputes, but there is a regime there that protects you. If you want flexible working, go ahead and ask for it, but just be mindful of what the business want, and hopefully if you've grown up conversations, that's an option you can have. Thank you.
We are supposed to be finishing, so I'm just going to say, if there are some burning questions, we're lucky enough that we've still got Katie, we've still got Jonathan, we've still got Oliver here, and Eric here too. Victoria is here. Is there anything you'd like to ask? How always ask?
Just use a microphone for answers so we can record words of wisdom.
If it's okay, can I just start off with a couple of the written questions somebody had they'd sent in who wasn't going to be able to come? Would that be all right? So, actually, I've got a few here. One person said, I've taken a career break to look after a young family and don't know how to get back into the workplace.
Can I take that one?
Please, yes.
Maybe it's a little predictable what I'm going to say, but I would say come to Resource, because at Resource we will help you with thinking about your job search strategy. How do you go about finding a job? What are your transferable skills? What do you really enjoy doing? How to go about thinking about a new career. We'll pair you up with one of our advisors who will help you in every aspect of your job search, as well as the one-to-one what you'll do with an advisor. We have a wonderful workshop called Career Review and Planning, where you really think about, you go back over your previous career and then start to look forward and build up a plan of your future career. And essentially, I would say that at Resource you'll find all you need. Is there anything?
Yes, so I was just going to add everything that Victoria said. There's also a few organisations that help returners. For women, there's Women Returners, which is an incredible support. I would absolutely suggest you go there. And then secondly, there are lots of firms now who offer returner programmes, largely the corporates, but there are a lot of returner programmes. So there are places to go to get support and to get back into the workplace, and obviously talk to me too, because I can help.
Any from the floor? So I have the written ones that have been sent in from people watching. Well, you can have a think about them while I ask another question, which I think is going to be directed to Oliver. Somebody has said, I get very nervous in interviews, particularly struggling with difficult interview questions. Is there anything that you could suggest to help?
Yes, absolutely. I think the most important one is to practice. But I think, so to do that, I think you can do your own self-videos and then review them back and see how you're doing. You can do that as many times, and of course, again, Resources here to help do some and give you some feedback on those. I think the other part is when you're faced with a difficult question, take a second and relax. There's no time constraint that you have to rush straight into an answer. You might be asked a question, you can turn around in an interview and say, just give me a second while I think about that, and then you can take a nice deep breath and start. So don't rush into your answer and practice a lot beforehand.
Thank you. Actually, I just had one. Am I allowed to ask one of my very own? I noticed on your slide you had, what animal would you be? Is that something people really do ask still?
I have heard that one, and also what is the headline of a newspaper article if it's written about you?
Like your obituary or something. Oh,
Can I just add that? Awkward questions. One that often comes up is, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Which is quite a tough one. And apparently, Liz Truss went for an interview the other day, and the interviewer said to her, Liz, where do you see yourself in 44 days' time?
I have another question from a young graduate who said that they find application forms a real struggle. I mean, they are vast, not just for graduates, but also for everybody, really. They can be quite long. Eric, maybe could you advise on those?
Okay. An application, you have no choice. If the prospective employer wants you to fill in an online application, then that's exactly what you have to do. But the principles are very much the same. I mean, Oliver talked about it, I talked about it. It's all about, can you do the job? Do you want to do the job? And will you fit in? And you've just got to be patient, go through the questions, respond in that way, using the STAR technique in writing as well as using them in interviews. Again, we give a lot of help and support to people doing online applications. From our perspective, when we do mock interviews, the most important thing about an online application is please make sure you take a copy of it. Because very often you get to the end and it doesn't allow you to save it, you just send it. So as you go through, just screen print every page, so you do have a reference to what you've put on your application form. It's very embarrassing if you can't respond to a question which you've already responded to in the application form because you've forgotten what you put on the application form.
Thank you.
So my husband is a trader working in a UK bank, and he was working during COVID. He came and started working home full time. He went back then 3 days a week, and then he went back 4 days a week, and he had Friday from home. So he's just been told this morning that now Fridays, everyone back in the office, and this is the new policy, everyone back to work. So does he, I know he does have rights, but won't he just be seen as a troublemaker if he goes and challenges it with his company?
Do we need to repeat the question?
I'll have to repeat the question. I will keep it briefer. Trader was working 4 days a week happily, now been told to come back on the 5th day. How to address it, and is that going to be a problem if they don't want to?
I think I'll take this one. One person's troublemaker can be another person's knight in shining armour. Now, I mean, knowing David as I do, as a senior individual at the firm, he typically has the type of profile whereby he can raise something. He's known he's not going to be a troublemaker. He's got a deep pot of goodwill. Now, he's probably quite fortunate. I imagine there are younger individuals probably faced in a similar situation, or younger individuals who have a promotion coming up in the pipeline or have a bonus coming up in the pipeline, and those are specific reasons why they might not want to raise it. Nonetheless, I recognise it's not easy, but I think sometimes the more senior you are, perhaps the more responsibility there is on you to make these questions. As for his rights, there's the flexible working regime. So he's able to ask for it. And of course, there's 8 reasons why they might say no. Ultimately, what this comes down to, and it's not the first time I've heard this type of question, is what's his reason for working from home on a Friday? If it's anything to do with Shabbat, then really the bank needs to turn around and justify why they're going to need him from 3:30, 4:30 onwards in the office. If it's, for example, for supervision, then quite frankly, it's unlikely why he needs to be there. Difficult to justify. If he also says that he can be on the other end of the phone at home, again, it's difficult to justify why he'd have to be in, if that's the reason. If the reason he wants to work from home on a Friday is because he likes to, I don't know, do the challah run in the morning, but that's about it, then that's probably not going to be a sufficient reason. So ultimately, if he's going to raise it and if he really wants to push it through, he needs to have probably a good reason related to a protected characteristic, probably religion, which will make the bank think about it. Now, that's a matter for him whether he wants to pursue it or not. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. I thought it was...
In a recent interview, I think it was in a charity, like my background is in law, I went to law school, but I didn't do the training contract or qualify. But I think maybe I tried to tailor my CV to make it less legal. But they questioned why didn't you qualify? I just think it was a bit scrutinized. So how do you turn it on its head? Just to basically market yourself in a more positive kind of way, yeah.
So I'm going to try, I think one of the ways to answer the question is to understand why you, go back to the question, why are you looking for the job? And why did you decide not to do law and you want to do something else? If you can explain to them that you went through your training but decided not to carry on, or went through the part, didn't qualify, and you can explain why that is, then it doesn't matter and it's not relevant that you didn't put your CV as a law CV. I think you have to be able to explain why you didn't go forward and why you're now interested in another role.
So I would just say I also studied law and didn't. Did you see that? Yeah. I also studied law and didn't qualify, but that's never been an issue for me. If anything, it's always been a positive because people have viewed it that, I studied law and that's great. And then I went on and did marketing. So I focused on all the really good experience I have. And no one's ever really questioned that. So just be confident in the stuff that you can do and not worry about the fact that you didn't qualify. It really shouldn't make a difference.
The other thing you can do is use that as an example of skills that you have developed as a result of it, which you wouldn't have had you not done that.
Verbally, it was fine, on the...
You turn it into a positive, right? And again, talk skills, not roles.
Again, another plug here, but I would really, really recommend having some mock interviews. So the resource team, 2 of our mock interviewers are here on the end, but really practicing that sort of conversation so much so that you're confident at it. And then when you go into real interview, you'll shine really. So come and see us. We'll make you an appointment. Forgot.
On that note, Victoria, I think we're going to have to end formally, but Victoria, could you just...
So just to remind you that I think our details are up on the screen behind us. Resource helps absolutely everybody who would like some help getting either back into the job market or into work or changing jobs, and as well as helping with all the specific skills around how to develop a CV, application forms, covering letters. I think in equal measure we help people with their confidence. We're there with you. We're like your professional cheerleaders. We cheer you on and we hold your hand and we motivate and encourage. We have an amazing team of professionals who will help you. Our services are all free. Some people say, what's the catch? This is so amazing. We are not-for-profit, as we said earlier, a charity, and we're funded by very generous people to provide this sort of help. So as well as the advisors, as well as our seminars and workshops, and our mock interviews, we provide IT training as well, so people who feel a bit rusty or unconfident can have one-to-one IT lessons with our trainers. And as Eric said, very importantly, we do a lot of work on LinkedIn. So there's an introduction to LinkedIn for people who either don't use it or who set up a profile but never really knew what to do with it. We have linked in an advanced session to really use LinkedIn far more strategically. And then there's a beyond the profile. When you've got your profile right, it's actually sort of a check-in to see, are you really using it to make connections, to add comment, to really enhance your profile. So they're the things we do. There's a lot more besides as well. But Jess, if you put a hand up, Jess can make an appointment if anyone would like to make an appointment today to see one of our advisors. We're based in Finchley Central and also online as well. And otherwise, be in contact afterwards. Have a look at our website if you like. The details are all in your packs. Thank you. So, yeah, that's all from us. I'd like to thank all of our speakers so much for coming this morning, and for you for coming to find out more about Resource, and also to hear Katie speaking. So thank you so much to all of you. Thank you.